were on the podcast recently when we talked about the Earth's galactic history. So now we turn our attention to our moon.
Yes.
Which I've heard described as perhaps the most mysterious object in the universe. What? And there have been books written about. In fact, there was one in particular I remember. It was called "Who Built the Moon?"
Who built the moon?
Because without the moon, life here on Earth wouldn't be possible. We just witnessed this total solar eclipse, and if the moon wasn't exactly the size that it is, 400 times smaller than the sun, and the distance between the Earth and the sun and the Earth and the moon is 400 times greater. Without those ratios, we wouldn't be able to witness a complete solar eclipse. So there's so many mysteries surrounding the moon. What were some of the early theories about the moon's origins and how it came to be here?
Well, there are those who believe that, in fact, if I could just back up a little as to what you were saying about the eclipse and the ratios, mm-hmm. There is a thought to that the moon was created by advanced extraterrestrials. Someone out there that has a lot of science and technology created this thing, brought it in here, but also lined it up so that it fits perfectly during an eclipse, which is, as you said, it really is mysterious and shouldn't be happening. So the idea is that those advanced extraterrestrials behind that part of it used the eclipse as a sign that we would actually from a primitive, grow from a primitive state to where we are now, to recognize the strangeness of it, the fact that this couldn't be possible pretty much unless there was intelligent design behind it. They wanted us to recognize by looking at that we are not alone in the universe. All right. That was one of the things. Some of the theories, though, as to how the moon came here, the scientists really don't know how the moon came to be. I grew up believing that it was captured here in Earth's gravity. Mm-hmm. And then they've had 5 theories, but that was the one I grew up with. And then the latest one, they said that the moon was, hit by a planet-sized a planetary body the size of Mars, and then the when it hit, Earth's elements spewed out into the universe and eventually created the moon. That was we call that kind of a slang name called Big Whack theory, or the giant impact theory is the official name. But if you go to NASA's website, they don't commit to that. They say pretty much that they think that's how it happened, but they're not really sure. So the scientists don't know. But one of the ideas is that going back to extraterrestrials, and I don't mean when I say extraterrestrials, little green men or little gray men. We're talking about, beings that have been around for millennia, that have the science and technology to create this thing and place it here in Earth's vicinity for a number of reasons. It's thought that maybe it was placed here to help stabilize the Earth, that maybe beings looked at Earth and thought, life there could thrive better, and they put this here. Others consider that maybe it is a generational ship. This thought came about by 2 Russian scientists from the 70s that looked at the Apollo astronauts' data that they brought back from the moon and concluded that this is not a real, that it is an artificial structure that was placed here with generations of beings in it, complete with engines and resources to help them to live. That's one thing. There's a number of reasons that and theories as to where the moon came from.
And the last one you described is the spaceship moon theory.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So the spaceship moon theory really is my favorite theory. And according to these scientists, these two gentlemen out of Russia, it pretty much is the only theory that clears up the mysteries of the moon, that it was placed here. Now, the spaceship moon theory came to my attention from a ufologist by the name of Don Wilson, who wrote a book with that title. And our spaceship, the moon, our mysterious spaceship moon. Yeah, so it is a spaceship or a kind of, I don't know if a spaceship qualifies as mega structure. I sometimes refer to it as that. And there may be star beings or extraterrestrials living inside of this thing. What's interesting is I think I mentioned on the show before that I am a Star Trek fan.
Yes.
And Gene Roddenberry, who was said to have, channeled extraterrestrials and then sat in on channeling sessions by a woman who channeled extraterrestrials. And these extraterrestrials told her they were traveling the universe with different people from different worlds. And he created Star Trek in his thought from that. But there was an episode in there where he had the crew following an asteroid that looked like it looked like an asteroid, but it turned out to be a spaceship. And the crew had beamed over, and the first thing they saw when they got there was structures, and then they went inside of this supposed asteroid to find out it was a generation ship where people had been living and dying for generations, trying to get across the universe. It's just weird to me, and this was before the Soviet scientists came up with this theory. And it's just strange to me that, he wrote about that. And I just wonder if he had some inside information, because this is what it looks like. It looks like, when we get into a little bit more of the information, that there may be someone living in there, and that the moon was created to look like a planetary body, a natural body, and designed to come across the universe. And it has a very difficult hull to penetrate. It looks like it was designed for harsh radiation and meteors hitting it. And the astronauts tried to drill into this thing, but they couldn't. So it looks like there may be someone in there. It looks like it was a protective entity designed maybe so that nefarious ETs out there wouldn't recognize it. And I guess the question would be, what would this thing be trying to protect that it's made this way? Well, it could be a generation ship.
Right. Didn't one of the astronauts comment that the moon, it rang like a bell when either they landed on there or when they did some sort of an experiment, as if it were hollow?
That's correct. So the first time they did it, I guess first and second time, what they did was from the lunar module. Now, for those not that familiar with it, there was a command module that they all came in on. Two of the astronauts would leave the command module, break free in a smaller ship called the lunar module, and the lunar module is made up of different pieces. So basically, they didn't want to take all the pieces back. They had to lighten the load to get back to the command module. So they threw a piece of their equipment. It was the ascent stage. They threw this thing into the moon, crashed it into it, and the moon reverberated. It didn't really ring. It didn't, there's no, ding dong, but it reverberated for quite a long time. They did this twice. Now, when this first happened, there was a press conference. People think that this is a conspiracy theory, but actually NASA scientists came forward at this press conference and said, it reverberated. We prefer really not to comment on it, but it appears that the moon is hollow. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be a thing. So it was NASA astronauts that started that rumor or that theory, and they put it out there, and then they couldn't take it back. I'm sure today they would like to have not said that publicly, because it's just grown into this huge question. If it's hollow, then what is it? It can't be natural.
So The implication here is then that that ETs or some type of entity living inside this hollow artificial structure, and yet there are reports, there are altered NASA photos apparently that showed structures on the moon. What do you make of those reports? I mean, I've seen the photos. I'm sure you've seen the photos of these. Well, they're structures
Yeah,
right on the
destruction.
surface of the moon.
Right on the surface of the moon. It's amazing. And one of the reasons I talk about this, because some people say, oh, I've heard there's structures on the moon. What else is going on? Well, there's a lot of people that haven't heard this story. They don't know that in the even before the astronauts went up, the lunar orbiter sent back a probe from NASA, sent back pictures with what looks like, what are structures on the moon. Some of the pioneers of that time, of that era, came forward. They wrote books. They made this, and they made announcements. They had a press conference that, they found structures and what appeared to be partial structures that looked like they were blown to bits. Now, what are the structures? They have found towers that are miles high. They have found pyramids that resemble the pyramids out of Egypt, which is very interesting. Is there a connection? They have a very famous one that kind of looks like a satellite dish. That's what they're calling it, but they don't, it's just like a pet name for it. They don't really know what that thing is. They found walls, an area that looked like it was used for mining. They found all kinds of constructions that they gave, nicknames to that they couldn't really place, but obviously were not natural. So let's see. Oh, so they found partial and whole structures on the moon back then, wrote books about it. Moving forward to today, our astronomers are seeing whole structures. Even one astronomer says, gosh, it looks like there's a city up there. So in my book, I actually wrote a chapter titled "A Moon Metropolis," because it really does look like there are complete buildings with pipes. There looks like there's roads. There are lights sitting around the craters of the moon, and someone has likened that to a parking lot. It looks like a parking lot that's lit up. Are those ships sitting there? So someone is using the surface of the moon, but not only that, they are using the inside of the moon, it appears, because the astronauts reported seeing lighted domes. And so it looked like there's an energy source where you can look down and see, domes with lights, which is very interesting. My guess is that there are beings on the moon using using the surface and inside of the moon. Whether or not it's one group or different groups, we don't know, but they appear to be there.